Hi, and welcome to the Clarity Confessions. This is Cailen Ascher, your host, and this show is the place for clarity, inspiration, and business secrets from top female entrepreneurs. And today on the show, we have Caitlin Padgett. She is the author of Drink Less, Be More, How to Have a Great Night and Life Without Getting Wasted, and a coach for successful women who struggle with alcohol. Whether the goal is moderation or eliminating alcohol completely, Caitlin supports women to find freedom on their own terms. At just 29 years old, Caitlin's work hard, play hard lifestyle started taking its toll, and she realized that she was often drinking herself to sleep and blacking out almost every weekend. Thirsty for alternatives to mainstream treatment, Caitlin combined her background in psychology, nutrition, fitness, harm reduction, and holistic health to craft an unconventional approach. Caitlin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I'd love to just start with real basic question. How did you get started on this entrepreneurial path that you're now on?
Well, I feel like I was always an entrepreneur. When I was 9 years old, I would babysit the neighbors' kids, and at the same time, I would pick blackberries and sell the blackberries to a local cafe. So I've definitely had the entrepreneurial bug for a long time. I've really loved the freedom of being self-employed, and fortunately, I've been able to combine my personal experience and my passion into the career that I've created for myself now.
That's fantastic. So I want to start with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for them?
Of course.
So first one, when did you get clarity about your current business?
I was actually walking down the beach in front of my mom's house and thinking about the fact that I wanted a book, and I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but a book for somebody like me who is struggling with alcohol, and there wasn't anything out there that really resonated. And I all of a sudden had this download, like, I need to write this book. And so it was interesting because it actually started with the idea for a book. Then I started studying holistic health coaching. Then I became a coach. Then I wrote the book. But that was my moment of clarity that happened probably about 3.5 years ago.
Awesome. So can you describe your business in 10 words or less?
Yeah, so I am a coach and an author who works with successful women who struggle with alcohol.
Perfect. Some people really struggle with that one. That was succinct and really clear. Nice. So why do you love your work?
I love my work because it gives me so much satisfaction, and I feel so grateful every time I'm working with somebody who is really struggling and felt really lost and alone, and no longer feels that way, no longer is in the struggle, no longer feels like they have to do this alone, and is able to finally make the changes that they've been wanting to make and were unsure of how to do it. And it's such an honor to be in that role with the people that I work with.
What makes you feel the most successful?
I think it's very similar to the last answer. It really, when clients have those aha moments, they'll often write to me after a session and just, quote something back to me that I've said or something that I've shared. Or it's often just a matter of guiding them to their own truth and realizations. And that for me is success, to be able to provide that to somebody, and for me personally and professionally to be in a position where I'm doing what I love every single day, helping people in a way that feels so meaningful, and then of course being able to make a living doing it. Like, that's just win-win-win. It's pretty amazing.
What personal practices or self-care do you make time for regularly?
My morning and evening routines are both really important to me, and it's interesting because I've been traveling a lot over the past couple of months, so I've really thought a lot about it. And even when I don't have a lot of time in the mornings, being able to get up, I travel, or the first thing I'll buy often when I get somewhere is lemons. I love my water and lemon in the morning. I have my green powders, or I try to make fresh green juices or smoothies in the mornings, and a cup of tea. I feel like when I take care of my physical body in a consistent way, even if it's just those 3 steps in the morning, I feel so much better. And there's actually kind of a bit of a meditative quality to doing that as well, to taking the time to do it. I also have a regular journal and gratitude practice. And then in the evening, similarly, I've been on the road and haven't been at home, but I have a lavender candle that I like to light as I read before bed. I have essential oils that I use. I take a little bit of time at the end of the day for reflection. And, these things don't have to take very long, but they really, really ground me in a pretty profound way. I notice the difference when I don't do them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
The freedom for me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I notice that I get constrained, and then I realize that it's a reality check where I'm like, wait a second, I'm putting these own constraints on myself. Really, I'm the boss, and I get to choose how much I work or don't work. And I love what I do, so I have a tendency to take on a lot. But really, at the end of the day, I'm my own boss. I decide what hours I want to see my clients. I can work. I live in Mexico for a large part of the year, and I'm in Canada right now. I was in LA California for a while on the way up here. And I get to take my work with me, which is amazing. So really, it could be summed up in the word freedom for me.
So then what is the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
There have been days where I've sort of felt, I just want somebody to tell me what to do. Sometimes it does feel overwhelming. Sometimes it feels like there's so many things that you could do, and how do you decide which one is the best one in that moment, or which program to roll out next. And fortunately, I work with coaches and I have great mentors. So, I myself have a coach, and that is really helpful. But there's definitely been times where I felt like I just want to hand over the responsibility to somebody else. But those moments are few and far between. And I think it really is about making sure that, it can be such a solo venture to be an entrepreneur, but making sure that you are supported and you have a team around you, and you have mentorship, and you also have, as your team grows, assistants and whomever that can support you to be in your role and stay in your zone of genius, so that you don't get, or I should say so that I don't get overwhelmed. I think that's really key. But the overwhelm sometimes can be challenging for me as an entrepreneur.
And so last question here. What is one word that sums up your business mission?
It's 2 words, being of service. 3, I guess, but is that okay?
Yes, that's totally fine.
Service. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for answering those. I'd love to dive in now and just kind of expand on some of the stuff we hit on. And you were mentioning, obviously, your story about how you kind of found clarity about your current business. And in that vein, I'd love to know, what did your first year in business look like?
So I had a really interesting experience in my first year of business so I had that moment that I described walking down the beach, where I had this very clear vision of the way I wanted to show up in the world in terms of the content I wanted to create and who it was for. Then I began studying to fill in the gaps of my knowledge around how to provide that service and that content. And then I hired a coach who really helped me feel confident in putting myself forward right away as an expert in that area, which is around alcohol. Then I launched my business, and within a month found out that I was pregnant, and ended up with a very high-risk pregnancy, and was on bed rest for a good portion of my pregnancy. So the timing was kind of crazy, because I'd spent all of this time getting ready to launch my business, and then all of a sudden wasn't really able to show up on a daily basis in the way that I thought that I should have been able to. But what it really did for me, in clarity's sake, was that it helped me really condense. And because I had limited hours in the day that I could work, I had also had limited ability. I was in bed a lot of the time. It really helped me zone in on how to be most effective in the time that I was able to be doing the work, and what were the most important actions that I could take on a daily basis or on a weekly basis in order to keep all of this momentum that I had getting ready to launch my business, in order to keep it going. And it was such a beautiful lesson because it really helped me stick within what my zone of genius was and is, and also my capacity to deliver on that, which was at the time seeing the clients that I had, really showing up for them and doing the best that I could with the clients that I had, and writing consistently. And even on the weeks that I felt really horrible, I still wrote. I wrote a blog every single week. I think I missed 1 week. And that practice of consistently writing and consistently sharing, and a lot of that writing then later became my book. A lot of the blogs that I wrote were some of my most popular blogs during that first year. And it really, really helped with the, it was almost like forced clarity in a way, but it was so positive in hindsight. At the time, it was difficult at times because it really did just allow me to have such a strong foundation of what are really the most important things for me to be doing. And then to build from there. And sometimes when I do, I mentioned overwhelmed, when I do start to feel overwhelmed, I often go back to the basics around what do I know I'm really good at and what do I know I can be really effective with.
That's fantastic. I think consistency is one of those missing ingredients that so many new entrepreneurs totally slack on or think that it's not nearly as important. But showing up in a valuable way consistently is one of the very best things you can do for your new business. So it's interesting that this health issue that arose for you that maybe felt like it was a setback for your business actually turned out to be this asset.
Yes, 100%. And I think, we can really get that shiny object syndrome as new entrepreneurs, and there's so many different, you should be doing this, or you should do this, or this is the best thing to do, or, and sometimes there's the possibility of losing patience as well. And, for those of you listening, I didn't have a big email list at the time, but what I did do was keep showing up and keep sharing. And I know that really earned a lot of credibility with the people that were following me. And it was such an important practice for myself to keep showing up, to keep doing what I could do over and over and over again. And as such, I think I became a great writer during that first year. Whereas if I hadn't been as consistent with writing my blog, it would have been harder for me to write my book, which I did in the second year of my business.
So dive into that a little bit more. Like, how was that process for you of writing a book so early on in your business? I know that's something that I think a lot of probably our listeners are really interested in and thinking about that being on the horizon for them, one of those big goals. What were some things you did for yourself that helped you create that so early on in your business?
Well, you asked earlier about daily habits. When I was writing my book, for probably 3 or 4 months, consistently wrote every single day. That was the first thing that I did after drinking my water and lemon juice and while drinking my tea. And, my daughter was young at the time. She was 6 months old. And she fortunately was on a sleep cycle where she was sleeping in a little bit at that time. So I knew that getting up and first thing in the morning, I just had this, it was this beautiful time of clarity for me early in the morning where I wasn't distracted or in responder mode yet. And so I loved that 45 minutes to an hour every morning to write first thing. And I felt so good because I knew that every single day that was the thing that I was prioritizing first and foremost. And it was often free writes. I would just fill up pages in a notebook. I love writing by hand. So I would sit, on my patio and I would write by hand. And later I would go and pull out sections and start putting them into the framework that I'd created in terms of the chapters of my book. The other thing is that you probably have a lot more content than you realize if you blog, if you write newsletters, even Facebook updates or posts, or however you communicate with your community and with your clients. Even going back and reviewing client emails, there's so much content that I'm sure any of you have. it's not about, you don't have to rewrite the book, sort of, so to speak. You don't have to come up with brand new content. In fact, some of your best content is probably stuff you've already shared and had a really great response to, whether it's a client going, yes, how you wrote that was amazing, thank you so much, or a blog that really resonated with your readers. So that for me was also, it was funny when I was plugging in my content to, it's called Grammarly, and it's a software that helps you edit, but it also helps you identify if any of the sections have been plagiarized or copied. And it was so funny because I'd plug in my content to be scanned by Grammarly, and it would pull up sections that were plagiarized by myself. It was like copying from myself, and I'm like, phew. But it was stuff that I had up on my website or whatever, or guest blogs that I'd written. But the point being, you have a lot of really great content already, and I firmly believe that probably each and every one of you listening could write at least an ebook or some sort of guidebook that's based on what you already teach and know best and are sharing already with your clients. And again, it's just about showing up consistently and giving yourself the time. And it's amazing what you can accomplish with 3 months or 6 months if you give yourself a deadline, and then just every single day spending that time writing, creating the content. And then towards the end, I had some longer blocks of time where I was really crafting my chapters and really putting, I needed bigger chunks of time to work on it. But, from start to finish, the whole process was just over 6 months.
Wow, that's amazing. I think, people think about writing a book, and yes, 6 months is a time commitment, but they probably are making it out to this bigger monster than it really is if you just, again, set up the time and have that consistent practice in place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to know, now that you're at this point in your business, 3 or so years in, I think you said, is there something that sticks out that you're most proud of in this time that you've been working on this?
I think what I'm really proud of is providing an alternative that really at the time I don't think existed. The way that I work with my clients is unique in that there's a lot of programs out there that help you get sober. There's a lot of programs that you can go into in order to be alcohol free. And there's very few programs or options for people who want to make some changes to their relationship to alcohol, know that it's not serving them in their lives, in their business, in their families, or however they're experiencing problematic issues with it, and yet they know intuitively that they don't need to give it up forever. In fact, one of their goals might be, I want to be able to go out and enjoy a glass of wine and feel satisfied and have that be it, and not be agonizing internally over whether I should be drinking more or less, or just to be able to be at peace with sharing a glass of wine or even a bottle of wine with their husband, for example, or going to a networking event and having a glass of champagne and having that be okay. And there's very few options out there that really support women to understand their relationship to alcohol and then redefine it on their own terms. And in fact, some of the blogs that I've written, on Mind, Body, Green or Huffington Post have actually been controversial in that I have put this forward as an option, because the alternative option that's been the kind of the loudest option, which is that if you have a problem with alcohol, you need to quit completely. That's been the sort of the dominant ideology. And I'm proud that I have been able to provide an alternative and that it's really working for a lot of my clients as it did for myself. And so that feels really good to be able to fill a space that that I saw was there, because I myself was looking for a resource like this and couldn't find anything. Mm-hmm. And that's very satisfying, and I feel a lot of gratitude around that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think there's something that so many people can glean from that. It's that you were looking for this option and it wasn't there, so you created it. And I think a lot of us, as we enter into businesses, we are our own ideal client, or our ideal client is a version of us, maybe, a few months behind or a few years behind where we are now in our lives. And it's so important that we listen to that intuition. And if there's something that we're looking for and not finding, often that means other people are too. And good for you for developing this option and developing this solution, because it's obviously served you and all of the amazing clients that you've had the ability to work with over the years.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I think you said if you have this intuition that maybe somebody else feels it as well, and I could say probably for sure other people do. Yeah. And the other thing is, I like that you said just a few steps ahead, a couple months ahead, to a year or 2 years ahead of your ideal client, because I think sometimes we have this sense that we really have to have it all figured out. And if I had waited until I had it all figured out, I still wouldn't have my business. And I'm very grateful to having a supportive coach who really helped nudge me to the whole idea of kind of start before you think you're ready, because you really actually are ready. And even now, when I share moments of vulnerability, or sometimes when I feel particularly triggered, when I share those moments, and sometimes I think, oh, should I even be sharing this? Like, are people going to judge me? Are they going to think, man, Caitlin, you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years and you still sometimes have that craving for wine? But I share it, and then my community members are like, thank you so much for sharing that, because it humanizes me, and it makes them feel like this goal isn't impossible, or it makes them feel like they're validated in the fact that they sometimes still feel these struggles as well. So the ability to be vulnerable, I think, it's really powerful also. And knowing that your clients don't need you to have it all figured out. In fact, sometimes it's helpful for them to know that these are still things that that you're figuring out, and that you're committed to helping them find the best way, and you're consistently engaged in your own process of investigation around it.
That's so insightful. Thank you for sharing that. So lastly, I just wanted to ask, what does the future hold? Like, what are some of the projects coming down the pipeline for you? What are you excited about working on?
Oh, so many things in the next, I mean, really, the way I view my work was that it was very internal over the past couple of years. Launching my business, working one-to-one, and writing my book were very kind of more private ways of doing the work. And I've started guest blogging more and being more vocal and doing more interviews like this, more podcasts, and really sharing the message differently. And the next step for me is really connecting with more people. So while I loved my one-to-one clients, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work, I'm also really excited. I did a beta program of a group program in the spring, and I'll be launching it again in November, and a membership program as well. And something I've really been hearing from my community members, while some really love the anonymity and want to work privately, others are really looking for community and a group experience, and being able to share and build friendships and know that there's other people who are going through similar things to what they are. And so I'm looking forward to helping create that for my community members and my clients, and also being able to reach more people, because I do know that this is working really well. And one-on-one coaching isn't for everyone. And so I'm really excited to be able to reach out and reach more people through a variety of different options for working with me and working with each other, being a part of a community and sharing this experience with others.
Fantastic. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights. And before we leave, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
I can be found at CaitlinPadgett.com. So that's CaitlinPadgett.com. And I am also Drink Less, Be More on Instagram, where I share different non-alcoholic drink inspiration and tips for moderating alcohol. And on Facebook as well as Coach Caitlin Padgett. And I'd love it if you reach out if you heard anything that's interesting for you, both from the business perspective or in terms of the content of what I'm talking about. I know this is an issue that a lot of people struggle with privately, because there isn't really a space to talk about it publicly. So feel free to reach out if you heard anything that was interesting or kind of personally relevant for you. And I also have a 3-part video series on my website, which is the Drink Less Success videos. And it really helps cover some of the 3 mindset shifts that I really have found helpful in order to redefine your relationship to alcohol. And it includes how to set really clear and powerful intentions, how to develop a positive mindset, and also how to set up accountability systems that work for you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. That sounds like some great content. Like she said, if any of this content spoke to you or you just want to connect with Caitlin, personally, that is the place to head. We are all about mindset transformations in this community. So if it is something that you're struggling with, it sounds like, you have some really valuable resources there. So again, thank you, Caitlin. And I thank you all for listening.